And I would say it comes down to this question. Can you really say you love others if you don't know how to love yourself first?
Tulsa Talks is the podcast that is inspiring people to have everyday meaningful conversations to gain perspective and help the world.
Welcome to Tulsa Talks. We have Joshua Lind as our guest today. Topic is conflict resolutions. Welcome.
Thank you, Craig. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, we've talked about doing this for a little while.
We have, yes.
I'm glad you're here. So maybe you've had some conflicts in your life, like most people, if not all people. I have conflicts inside myself sometimes. How do you resolve conflicts? And what is your platform to be able to discuss this?
It's a really good point to talk about that you brought up, inner conflict. And I think that's the most important one, is being able to, it's the name of another podcast, actually, Know Thyself, to know yourself. And it's okay to have these feelings and these experiences. But how you process it makes all the difference in you having peace and others around you having peace, is the short snippet of it before we get into it. As far as the vehicle to do that, I would ask a different question, is what isn't the vehicle? You know, of nothing is by accident. Who you meet, I believe it's not happenstance of who, for instance, how we met.
You say it's orchestrated.
Orchestrated. And so with that, taking a very how do I want to say this? Not taking it for granted of who you have the opportunity to speak with and interact with, whether it's in a professional setting at work, whether it's being on a podcast, whether it's at church or in a fellowship or at the gym, wherever you are, being intentional about not only who you are, but the opportunities you have to build relationship. So I would say the vehicle for me is being intentional about building a relationship appropriate to the level of whoever I'm meeting. And you may not know what that relationship's going to look like, and that's okay. It's part of the joy of life. But understanding that we can either waste a relationship or we can be intentional about it. And I would say to be intentional about it, we need to be intentional about ourselves first, inside out.
Sure. Conflict will arise even if you are intentional? Potentially.
Absolutely.
Why? Why would conflict arise? Before we talk about how to resolve it, why would it arise, Joshua?
As far as my philosophical approach to it, or can you clarify that a little bit more?
Yeah, your philosophical approach, and then maybe we'll get into some life experiences.
Okay. So once again, you're full of great questions, Craig. That is one thing I very much enjoy about you, is you are a phenomenal listener, and all that listening.
Wait, now I'm thinking about something. I'm about to forget it about it. If I have to listen to you any longer, is what I hear a lot of people do. A lot of people say, but this is about me. And I learned a decade ago it's not. It's not about me. So stop complimenting me, answer the question.
Right. I appreciate that about you, Craig. And you can't take that away. Why do we have conflict? The same thing, why do we have money? You know, why is our society built around the need of money? Because it brings around the opportunity for relationship. Same thing with conflict, is if everything went great and everything always went your way, would you have the opportunity to think from someone else's perspective? to put yourself in their position and understand that this individual is doing the best they can with the knowledge they have, especially professionally. I mean, in the workplace, where I don't know what their workload is. I don't know what they're going through, but I can give them the benefit of the doubt that they are doing everything they can to meet their duties. And then, yes, they have professional responsibilities, but they also have a home life. They're a person. They have experiences. They may have conflict going on at home. And so if there's a conflict that comes up, let's say, for example, in a professional circumstance, working, I could not give them the benefit of the doubt, get upset, because I know exactly what my personal situation is like and my professional situation is like. Or I can slow down and say, hey, is there something I'm missing?
Yeah.
And the reason, to answer it a little bit more succinctly, that I think conflict exists is it's an opportunity for us to build a bridge into a healthier relationship.
Yeah. There seems to be a lot of conflict, and has been, in politics and also religion. And those are two things that people say you should not discuss with people, because you'll probably get into an argument. You'll probably get into conflict if you discuss religion and politics. And that's my favorite thing. My favorite thing is to learn what somebody else really thinks so that I might be able to gain better perspective. And that's why we do Tulsa Talks. We want to know what, as many people as I can listen to, I want to hear what they think. So what do you think about religion?
We've talked about this quite a bit, so it's no surprise to me that this was going to come up. I think it's important for someone to find peace within themselves, whether that's through Jesus, Buddha, whatever that entity may be. It may be yourself, to bring peace. Craig, you know this. I used to be a pastor. I went to school to be a Baptist pastor. And for some people, that's what brings them peace. For me, it did not bring peace. It was a constant checklist of, you are righteous if you do this, 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 and this. And so
that's laughable. That is freaking laughable. You're righteous if you accomplish things, just like the Old Testament with the 10 Commandments, which I just realized that it's not even the 10 Commandments. Did you know that?
There's 613 of them.
Yeah. But the word is actually words, not commandment.
Mm-hmm. You were right.
And I say that they are descriptive, not directive, which means they tell you who you are and what you do when you're at that peace instead of trying to accomplish them. So why the hell would we want a checklist? Exactly. Throw that out the window.
Right. And we are all created unique and individual. And I'm not saying that accountability isn't important, but this idea that we all have to fit in the same box, we have to have the same religions. And it was, I grew up in a very conservative circle, independent, fundamental, King James only, let's sing hymns. We don't want to listen to contemporary Christian music, that type of thing. So my upbringing was very conservative, and the college I went to was also very conservative.
Conservative meaning traditional?
Traditional, yeah, independent, fundamental Baptist.
Traditional, somewhat rigid?
Very rigid. Very rigid.
Yeah, that's not me.
Right. Definitely not you, and I love it.
So if you're going to talk to somebody and they happen to be that, and you get onto the subject of religion, how do you navigate it without conflict?
Well, you probably know this about me, Craig, is I'm not necessarily so keen on avoiding conflict. Conflict
resolution.
Right.
Okay, so if you
don't
get
get
into
to practice the resolution if you don't make a conflict first. No. I do my best to provide what I think the conversation needs. And I don't want to cause conflict, but at the same time, I'm not going to tiptoe
around somebody else
around it. And I believe we should each, not necessarily we each, but all of us should be able to trust our fellow man and fellow woman to be the fullness whoever they are at that moment, and that I have the ability to provide grace for them, whether I agree with their situation and their position or not. It doesn't matter whether I understand it or even whether I approve of it or not.
Yeah.
They are still a beautiful individual. And so if that person who I'm giving the benefit of the doubt is doing the best they can, and they're a different religious orientation, are they at peace? Are they seeking peace?
Yeah.
That's what's important to me. And if they want to know what I'll ask, I'm happy to share.
Yeah. So how do you help them get to peace? Because you just said you wanted them to have peace. What do you contribute to their lives to be able to help people get into that peaceful state? Because maybe we're talking about a couple of different kinds of conflict resolution. Because maybe if they're not at peace, maybe you can help them find peace within themselves, which is conflict resolution for that person's self.
Right.
So what do you bring to the table?
I had a pastor who was a mentor to me, and I was only been married for a few years, a Baptist pastor up in Spokane, Washington. And his name was Jim. He's passed away recently. And I remember we had talked about soul winning. And
define that.
The idea that you basically, you either go door to door, but somehow you make this relationship with this person and get to a position where you can ask them if they know if they're going to heaven when you die or when they die, and how they can know for sure they're going to heaven. It is the basis of this idea of soul winning.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I've been there, done that.
I was starting to have an issue with it for numerous reasons. And I had realized that you can't expect to have one of the most intimate conversations with someone as a stranger. And we've talked about this before. You're in essence having let's call it a bedroom level question in someone's front door. You haven't even made it into the living room yet.
Yeah, you hadn't even been invited through the front door. They barely peeked into you.
You haven't even
barely
been into
the door.
The foyer yet.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, as far as what I bring to the table, answering your question, is that it's not about me to steal a line from you, but I can know myself and do my best at focusing on what brings me peace. Because if I'm at peace, if someone else is having conflict and I'm at peace, I'm more likely to be able to help be a centering force instead of me getting all riled up too.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's my foundation? If my foundation is one of knowing how to take a stressful situation and say, this is something that's happening and it's happening for me instead of happening to me, it doesn't matter what the situation may be. Professionally, personally, having the mindset of what am I going to do with this? We can't always control what happens to us, but we can always control what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And so my mentality is more of relationship. What can I do in this relationship to show up as the best version of myself and see where the conversation goes, see what happens, because I'm not there to change anybody else. I'm just there to be me. And if that brings someone else peace, great. And if it doesn't bring them peace, well, maybe this isn't the relationship for them. Not in a haughty spirit of I'm always right. It's just, if a relationship isn't in alignment with who you are, why would you continue to invest and sow that seed and water the seed and watch the plant grow and help prune the plant when it's not bringing them peace and it's not really bringing you peace?
Because I want to change who you are. I want to change who you are, and that's why I continue with you down the road. That is a big Christendom way of being right now. I got to change you. First off, I've got to possibly offend you by asking you bedroom questions at the door. And then I have to almost forcefully shove down your throat what I think.
Yeah, and I've been there. I've done it.
Me too. Long time ago.
And it's...
I call that talking at people.
Right.
And then I think we may have went down this same road and realized I was supposed to talk to people. And then now I'm at least entering the phase of talking with people, if not well on that road. And I think you're probably in alignment with being that person.
Yes, sir.
So maybe we can avoid conflict if we keep our boundaries to a certain degree.
You definitely mitigate. I would agree.
Maybe we can also lower the amount of conflict that we have in our lives if we're not trying to be in a relationship with somebody that's not in alignment with us, or we're not in alignment with them. And I say that pridefully to start, and I had to check myself, to be honest with you, if somebody's not in alignment with me. If we're not in alignment with each other is what it boils down to, because my way is not necessarily the right way. It's my way for now.
Mm-hmm.
Their way is their way, and maybe later. But for now, we can not do this. Maybe later. What happens if you do get into a conflict with someone? What do you do to resolve that conflict, Joshua?
That's happened a time or two, believe it or not, to me.
You are a strong personality.
I definitely am. And it took years and years of getting to a position to where I was comfortable with myself. And I would say it comes down to this question. Can you really say you love others if you don't know how to love yourself first?
What does that even mean, love yourself?
Giving yourself the opportunity to be who you are. And it's really easy to give someone else grace.
Yeah. Where's personal growth with allowing yourself to be who you are?
Time. And being comfortable with it. It's really easy to look back at decisions I made 5 years ago and to say, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I would have done this instead. But was I doing the best I knew how 5 years ago?
With the information that you had.
With the information I had then. And it'll be just as easy 5 or 10 years from now to look back at where I'm at now and say, man, I wish I would have done that. But part of loving myself is giving myself the grace to understand that this life is a journey.
Yeah. Monday night quarterback sucks. Sunday game, Monday night quarterback.
Yep.
That sucks. That's the easiest way to beat yourself up.
Mm-hmm.
So give yourself grace.
Give yourself grace and understand that it's a journey. I don't need to have all the answers right now. I don't need to have it all figured out right now. And if your religious beliefs tie into that, where God's going to give you the strength to help get you through, or it's Jesus is going to get you through, whatever your source of peace, lean on that and understand that I'm doing the best I can. If it takes me a week to figure it out, a month, 2 years, 5 years, it's all going to work out. And me being stressed out about what I can't control, me trying to control my wife, my children.
Yourself. Can you actually control yourself?
That's a really good question. I would say, if you're being honest, control is very limited. And
I can't control the breath that I have.
right.
I can't control if something happens to me physically.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how deep you want to go into that. The issue or opportunity, depending on how you look at it, is we are so quick, it's hardwired into our subconscious. We have a thought, I am overweight. Whatever it may be, I'm not attractive. Whatever
the challenge might be in your life. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Whatever it is, whatever it may be, that we attach ourselves to these thoughts. But a thought is like a bird flying through the air. The bird doesn't belong to the sky. The sky doesn't go, that's my bird. But just like a bird flying through the air, we have this thought, and we have thousands of them every day. And we take those destructive thoughts and we hold on to them instead of them letting them fly through the air like a bird. And we hold on and we obsess over them.
Say some people attach themselves to the negative thoughts instead of the positive ones. Is it maybe easier for a lot of people to attach to those negative thoughts instead of the positive ones?
I would say so. Not that I'm any industry expert, but I think our listeners would also say the same thing.
That's what I hear a lot.
Right.
I think it's possible to switch that switch.
I know it is because I do it. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but for me to find peace and me to love myself, that's where it starts. You want to say the foundation, if you're building a retaining wall, for instance, you don't just start at the ground level. You've got to go underneath the ground to build a solid foundation.
Sure.
What's the foundation for loving yourself? You got to start with your thought life and understand that this thought isn't mine. I don't need to assign anything to this thought.
Who the hell's is it if it's not yours, Joshua? If a thought's in your brain, whose thought is it if it's not yours?
I'm okay with not knowing the answer.
We are interesting. Humans are interesting. Maybe we possess our thoughts, but our thoughts don't possess us.
And to be honest, I haven't spent a lot of time, speaking about thought, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Well, you think about inner conflict resolution.
Mm-hmm.
And where does inner conflict come? How does that occur?
A situation arises that brings unrest.
Yeah, in your thoughts.
In your thoughts. And someone on the outside of your mind may have no idea what's going on, and you can get so worked up about it because you've taken all these thoughts and you've assigned beliefs to a thought. That's work that I did. I had a thought and I said, this is about me. This is describing my situation. And then I assigned a belief to it. And then once I assigned a belief to that thought, I took ownership of it and I assigned a feeling to it. And then I did that again. And then I thought about it for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And now I've got all this feeling going to this thought that I took ownership of and made a belief about. Whereas me and you could have a conversation about the exact same situation. And you could come away with a completely different thought.
You could say a lot of words, and I could hear different words than you actually said. And I've actually realized that different words have come out of my mouth than what I thought that I said.
Really?
Absolutely. And my wife and I have a good time with that. 34 years of good times with that sort of thing, where she'll say something and I said, I didn't hear you, but I heard something of what she said. And then she would repeat like maybe 4 words out of 10. Or maybe she would repeat 10 words out of 4. And I'm like, that's not what you said.
Right.
Well, that's what I thought I said.
Right. But it was those 6 extra words make a really big difference.
Or those 6, yes, either way. Those 6 extra words going either way mean a huge difference. And if my mind tracks and I miss a word that you say, huge. If I add a word into my thoughts. If that's possible, then that could change my thoughts forever. So where are we going with this? What about our thoughts and our embracing those with beliefs and then allowing our emotions to get run away? How do we capture that? Maybe capture it instead of letting it capture us.
Do the best you can at it, and understanding that if we're going to solve the conflict that happened, so conflict is unrest due to a thought and then a belief and then a feeling of, okay, I understand how the process works. I understand what the formula looks like. So for me, and our listeners are, your listeners are probably different. Some of them may not be as analytical. They
might have already turned us off if they were.
But everyone's different. For me, it helps understanding what the formula is. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's the formula of, if I understand what this looks like, the ingredients are to make this cake, if I change this, I'm going to get this result. And I have fun with my children, you know. My daughter went on a field trip, and she was telling me how chocolate milk was made, and I was having a little bit of fun with her. I was like, yeah, the chocolate milk is made by brown cows. And she said, no, it's not. I said, how's it made then? And before she could answer, I said, oh, I know. You give them cocoa beans. You give a white cow cocoa beans, and that's how you get chocolate milk. No, Dad, that's not how it works. You know? And so
how old's your daughter?
She is 12.
Okay, cool.
Right. And so as a parent, you love having fun with your child and seeing how much they understand. And when you're purposefully giving them the wrong information to see how they're going to respond and how well they know it. You know, if a teacher's explaining something to you, you can tell really quick whether they understand it themselves or not. And so for me, it helps to understand, what are we talking about at the foundation? If I know what I'm looking at, then I know how to control my thoughts. And
that's why I asked, are your thoughts your own, or they come from somewhere else?
I'd say they come from someone else, somewhere else. And just because it's a thought doesn't mean that I have to assign a belief to it or a feeling about it.
Or spend any time on it?
Absolutely.
So how do you break it in yourself for your own practices?
Intentionality. You can be intentional about anything. It's what you choose to be intentional about.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're going to have a 100% success rate.
Yeah.
You know, those who meditate, meditating is great, but it's not easy.
My wife and I had two different ways of raising our daughter.
That makes it difficult.
And, well, I lean more into the way that she did it now, and I think she leans a little more into the way that I did it now. And I was always, just don't do it. Just make sure you don't do that, or that you absolutely do that. And that's the way that I lead myself, probably still 70% of the time. Maybe not as much as that, but I used to be almost 100%. And she was a distractor. Hey, why don't we go do this instead? Doesn't this sound like some fun? Our daughter's Alexis. Doesn't this sound like fun, Alexis? Why don't we go do this over here? And hers was a lot smoother than mine. Do you think that we can do that for our brains? Do you think we can cut that thought off by which way is more effective? I'm not going to think about that anymore. I'm not going to think about that anymore. I'm not going to think about that anymore. Or, hey, brain, how about let's go do this over here? Or what's your option? How do you not do that, not think about that anymore, not attach a belief to a thought?
Well, I would say, what is the end goal of this? Start from the end instead of the beginning. The goal is to love yourself.
Yeah.
To have peace,
freedom, peace.
to love others.
Yeah.
And I was very similar to you. It's very rigid. This is the form work. And if you want to make me happy, X, Y, Z needs to be done.
Yeah, to myself.
Yeah, or to my children.
Yeah, not so much.
You know,
yeah.
this is how I told you to clean the room. This is what I expect it to look like.
Yeah. It was more like keeping her safe.
Right.
It was more like keeping her safe, not rigid rules that she had to perform certain things. It was, let's not do that. That's not healthy.
Okay.
It was that sort of thing. And instead of, physically removing her at a young age from that, Rita would lead her away with a carrot.
Right.
So with our minds, we might be going into a dangerous position, dangerous situation sometimes with thinking about ourselves, attaching those beliefs or whatever it is, and then having emotions about it this causes people all kinds of physical ailments, this sort of thing, because this is what we're talking about, stress, basically, stress or peace.
Right. Words are powerful. Disease, dis-ease.
Yeah.
Where does a lot of disease start?
Yeah.
Within.
Yeah. So your style was, this is the way we're going to do life.
Before I knew how to love myself, yes. And this journey has been 5 to 7 years, so it's relatively new to me.
And you're an old man already. How old are you, Joshua?
36.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say old. I feel old sometimes.
I am old. You're middle age.
Yeah. But
that's crazy, isn't it? 36, maybe 40, middle age.
Right. And it's not until you hit your 30s where you're really finally starting to figure things out.
Somewhat. Maybe you're figuring out that you hadn't figured it out.
Right. How much you don't know.
Yeah. So how do you navigate that brain process to rid yourself of the stress and not get beliefs attached to your thoughts?
Having a process, or like you would use the word platform or vehicle, that's a regular systematic part of your life to help control it. So meditation would be a great one, to where regularly spend 5, 10, 15 minutes a day meditating. Meditating
is to try not to think at all, right? Or is it meditate on this? Because there's a couple different kinds, right?
Right. And I'd say whatever works for you is, why do we need to make something so hard and fast to where some people can't not think about anything? Or someone says, I'm going to think about something obscure like an orange. I'm just going to visualize it. For me, what I do when I meditate is sit still, sit calm, preferably I want it dark. I typically do meditating in the sauna.
Yeah, and I don't allow you to do that when I come in.
We have
hey, what's happening, Joshua?
We have some good conversations for sure.
So anyway, in the sauna.
Right. In the sauna, quiet, calm, dark, and exactly what we just talked about. It's okay to have a thought. You haven't failed. I don't need to beat myself up because I have 1,000 thoughts while I'm sitting to meditate. It's, hey, look, a thought. Hey, look, a bird in the sky. Interesting. And just let it go. I don't need to assign a value, a thought, a belief, or a feeling to a thought. I'm not saying don't ever do that. I think it's important to have this is who I am, this is what's important, and recognize that's going to change.
Yeah.
And that's natural and it's healthy. But at the same time, I can avoid a whole lot of conflict if routinely I am disassociating from thoughts that are harmful to me and saying, it's a thought, that's an interesting thought, okay, and moving on. And there's another thought and another one. And so not necessarily for me trying to think about something else, it's just, I'm going to sit here and I'm just going to be at rest. And I'm going to see what happens.
What's the difference in that when you lay down in bed? Or before you get up out of bed?
There are people of incredible intentionality of different religious sects who will talk about what you just talked about. They will rewind their day with great intentionality before they go to sleep, and that's what they do every night.
Yeah.
And that's a form of meditation.
I thought everybody did that.
Well, typically, what I do if I'm doing that, it's not good. I'm beating myself up if I do.
Oh.
And someone can do that and not beat themselves up.
Yeah.
And great. But for me, typically, if I'm rewinding the day, just where I'm at personally, to be honest with you, is it's more of not being in a healthy mindset of, man, I can't believe so-and-so did this to me. I can't believe I have to deal with this.
Okay.
I'm frustrated about having to do this. So for me, I typically do my best to not think about how the day went, if we're being honest.
Sure.
But that's the beautiful thing is, you know, you have a skill set there that not that I couldn't cultivate.
Yeah.
It's just we're different places.
Yeah. Lay there and think about what went right, what could have been better, and be thankful for what was accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
And then wake up in the morning and think, okay, now this is what's ahead of me.
Yes.
Thanks for the opportunity, and let's get this thing done.
On the flip side, one thing that does work very well for me is that time in the morning of not getting on the cell phone, not looking at social media right away, but doing exactly what you thought about or what you just spoke about, is thinking about the day, being thankful for the opportunity. For me, I thank God for the opportunity to be able to have another day. And, okay, how am I going to, if I have any challenges I know that are going to be presented to me that day, how am I going to navigate them? And to, maybe I had a rough day or week before, to give myself space and grace and love from that and say, okay, it happened. Whatever it may be, whether I liked it or didn't like it, it happened. And I can move forward and life is going to be okay. And I can have a great day and I can love myself and I can love other people. I think it's important.
Love is very important. Forgiveness of self is very important. And living in the knowledge that you have all that it takes to do whatever it is that you should do is very important. And knowing people around you have all that it takes for them to do whatever they're supposed to do, in my opinion. And knowing the balance between helping someone else grow, when to speak, when not to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that conflict is healthy sometimes, even inside myself.
Absolutely.
Because we're on an amazing adventure that I might have another 30 years, maybe, percentages wise. And that's not very long to do what I should do, to love as many people as I have the opportunity to every day. Thank you for coming in, Joshua, sharing your way of conflict resolution, knowing that it starts within us and that it starts with a thought, and how we share those thoughts with ourselves and with each other is the most important thing.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate it. And more than that, the opportunity to know you and what you're passionate about.
Yeah, well, at the Complete Peace Movement, we know that we're all one piece. We celebrate each individual piece as they live beside us and in us and through us, actually. And Tulsa Talks, you know your voice matters.
We are here to help you discover or develop your passions, how you can use them, and why you exist. How can we help you help others better?